Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on UVM Verbosity, and this time we are going to discuss about the verbosity override methods in details. So let us begin. So as we observed in my previous video that the default verbosity threshold is UVM medium, and any UVM info macro that has a verbosity level of higher verbosity level higher than the default verbosity threshold will not get printed. So this particular UVM info message has the verbosity threshold of UVM debug, and other than the UVM info, all the other macros like UVM warning, UVM error, or UVM fatal, they have their default verbosity threshold as UVM none. So regardless of whatever the level of verbosity threshold is, these messages will get printed. So let's just run this again to verify that. So right now, as you can see it, that uh, the verbosity is UVM debug for this particular UVM info, and it should not get printed. So let's just open the QuestaSim and let's just compile this particular code. Let's run the simulation. So as you can see it right here that the UVM warning macro is getting printed, but we don't have our UVM info macro printed right here, and it is because of the fact that we have we have set the third argument as UVM debug. So any UVM macro, info macro, which has the verbosity set higher than the default verbosity threshold, will not get printed on the console. So of course there has to be a way to change that. So right now I will write a very simple method which could be written inside your component or any other piece of code inside your UVM hierarchy test bench. And here, what I want this particular UVM info message to get printed on the console. And to do that, I will use the simplest method, and it is set report verbosity level. And it has one argument, and that particular argument is the most obvious one. It is the verbosity threshold you want to set by default. So by default, it is UVM medium, and we want to change that to make this guy printed on the screen. So we will change it to UVM debug. So after saving the code and set report verbosity level UVM debug. So this particular method has only one argument, and the methods which I will discuss later in the videos will become more complicated, and they are suitable for the complete test bench. For example, the test bench which I have used for the verification of a simple adder. So for this simple class, let's just go ahead and run the code and let just check whether this message will get printed this time or not. So I will compile the code again. Okay, let's run the simulation. So what we have here, you could see that that particular message is getting printed. Voila. And it is because of the fact that we set the default verbosity threshold to the UVM debug, which is the maximum verbosity threshold, and it has a value of around 600. So right now, any possible UVM info, regardless of its verbosity level, will get printed on the console. So this is one of the basic way of setting the verbosity threshold. So I would like to discuss the other methods which are very similar to this, but I will use those methods for our complete UVM adder test bench. And if you haven't watched the verification video in which I have created the UVM environment for that particular test bench from scratch, I will suggest you to check that out. So here we are inside the test class of that UVM adder, and it is a very simple design. It's just add whatever the two inputs have, and we have the other level of hierarchies. This is the design, this is the interface, and then we have agent, driver, environment, monitor, package we have mentioned all the files, then scoreboard, sequence item, then test, and then top finally. So we will do some modifications in our UVM underscore test, and here we will do some verbosity change. So firstly, let's discuss about the first method that we used, that is set report verbosity level. So I have categorized the verbosity level into three different segments. So the most important thing is that you should mention the verbosity in the start of simulation phase, or any build phase which is not top down but down top. So I know you will get confused, but I will discuss more about the top down and down top and phases in general in details in my upcoming lectures. But for now, let's just get to the practical. So as you can see that for this simple class, I have used the method super.buildPhase. So what I am doing, I didn't use super.buildPhase. I used set verbosity level hierarchy. So I have used this particular verbosity level method, and there is a alternative. There is a variant of this method, which is called set verbosity level underscore hierarchy, or HIER in abbreviated form. So the difference between these two methods is that this particular method, this verbosity override, is getting applied to the class in which it is mentioned, and the child class or the children class. So this particular verbosity override will get applied to this particular class and the children classes, the classes which are uh, inheriting the test class. So it will only get applied to the UVM test hierarchy. And this is a bit more effective method. It will get applied to this particular class, which is UVM test, and to its children classes, and also to all the classes which are down the hierarchy. So after UVM test, what you can see it right here that um, inside the build phase we have mentioned environment. So it will get applied to the environment class. Then after environment, we have agent, and it will get applied to the agent class and the and similarly to the scoreboard class. And then after that, it will get applied to all the components which are mentioned inside the agent. Those are monitor, sequencer, and driver. So this is the flow that if you mention it right here and you just add this particular portion, it will get applied to this class and to its children and to all the subclasses which are down the hierarchy. So it is a very powerful tool. But here, what will happen if we will use it inside the build phase? Let's find out. So let's just comment this one out since we have already used it. And let us just say that uh, let us pick any of the uh, let's say driver, and driver has some UVM info macro, and the verbosity is set as UVM none. So let us just set the verbosity as UVM low, or not UVM low, verbosity threshold which is higher than the default verbosity threshold. So let's just set this UVM high. So of course, if you will run it by default, the UVM high will not get printed. So what we want to do, we want to increase the verbosity threshold. And if we increase that verbosity threshold, this message will get printed, the message which belongs to UVM driver. So here we will do the set verbosity level in the test class. So here we are doing the set verbosity level hierarchy UVM debug, and by the definition itself, it should get applied to all the test benches which are down the hierarchy. So what will happen if you don't use that? Let's find out. So if you don't use that, the all the UVM messages which will get generated for the driver will not get printed because they have a verbosity threshold of UVM high, and the default verbosity threshold is UVM medium. And also, I think all the other classes have, uh, not the agent, the monitor have, yeah, it has UVM none. So yeah, by definition, the driver should not get printed. And let us just take a look at our sequence. So we are repeating the transaction for 10 times in a row. So there will be 10 transactions, and as per our expectations, there should have been 10 UVM info messages from the driver, but since we are setting the verbosity of that UVM info macro as UVM high and the default verbosity threshold is UVM medium, this should not get printed. Let us just go ahead mm, and compile this. We will compile the top level module because it has everything included inside it. Yep, it is fine. So let us just run the top level test bench. So as you can see it right here that we have few UVM info messages and one UVM fatal message. Okay, so we did miss something. So let's find out. Oh yeah, I remember. So in our last video, we intentionally used uh, the override method, the report override, the factory, the report override method to replace the default driver class to the driver 2. I think we should comment that out. So if you have watched my previous video in which I have discussed the verbosity in which the override method, you will get what I'm saying. Yeah, this factory override method. So I will just comment this out. Now it should work just fine. I have to compile it again. Let's run it. So here we have all of our transactions, and you could see it right here that we are not seeing the driver. So this is the report summary which says that how many macros have been triggered by certain classes. So you could see that sequence has triggered 10, scoreboard has 20 because it has 2 UVM info, and since there are 10 transactions from sequence in total, so yeah, 10 times 2, 20. So monitor has 10 and driver has none. So you could see that as per the order, the very first sequence should be from the sequence, and it is right here because the UVM verbosity for this particular UVM info inside the sequence one is UVM none. Then after that, right before the driver's transaction, we should have a UVM info message showing everything inside the driver, but it is not being shown. You could see it right here. And we are directly getting UVM monitor and UVM scoreboard. So, and the another UVM scoreboard info macro. So the macro inside the UVM driver is getting skipped, and it is because of the fact that we have set the verbosity threshold for that particular UVM info message mentioned inside the UVM driver as UVM high. So using the verbosity override methods, we want to replace the default threshold so that this particular UVM info will also get printed. So let's do that. But remember, just take a note of one thing, that right now I am applying this particular threshold inside the build phase. So I am applying the threshold inside the build phase, and here you could see that I am applying it so that it will become UVM info. So let's find out whether the change will take into effect for the UVM driver or not. Let's compile it again. So as you can see it right here, that all the messages of the UVM driver is getting printed. So the verbosity did take into effect. So we just managed to use to change the threshold inside inside the top level class, which is UVM test, and all the messages of UVM driver which were not getting printed earlier are now getting printed, even with the verbosity level of UVM high. Let's see other iteration. This is scoreboard, this is from monitor, and this is from driver. So that's how this works. So this just change all the threshold globally to the not globally to the class and the classes which are down the hierarchy.